Previously on Real Life Wednesday.
Welcome to Real Life Wednesday, where real life and faith intersect. Today we have a special edition of Real Life Wednesday. We're just going to go down the line. We're going to ask a question about the Bible and see what Pastor Matt has to say about it while eating increasingly hot wings.
Just a heads up, I'm a baby. I'm already crying.
All right, so let's dive into the next wing here. This is next to last wing, so Chile de Arbol. So we'll see how this one goes.
It's tough when I can't pronounce it.
Okay, and moving on to the next question I have for you. And this may even...
That's so good, I bit my finger.
Oh, good. Well, watch out for that. Watch out. And this may tie into what we just talked about. So in Ephesians 6, we have this passage from 10 to 17. It talks about the armor of God is what the NIV puts the heading on, and that's what we kind of, I think a lot of people will focus in on. But there's a verse in there that's kind of like what the armor of God is maybe for. And I'll read that verse out, and we can look into all the armor of God if you want. But so this
Sandals.
Yes.
So
this is Ephesians 6:12, and it says, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms." And we see Paul talk about this a lot, about the rulers, the authorities, and I feel like we just kind of buzz by those words, but it feels like there might be more in there that maybe we're not thinking about or missing. And then especially as it talks about, the armor of God is for this thing. It's not for it's not for enemies of the flesh. It's for these spiritual forces. So I don't know if you can tell us something about Ephesians 6 and anything there.
Yeah, a lot to say, as always. I say
it every time.
Yeah, I say the same thing every time. A lot to say. I think it's important for us to understand, first of all, what happened in Genesis 11 with the Tower of Babel, and the nations were scattered. When the Septuagint, when they translated in Greek, it's the Goyim. And so Goyim is nations. It's also the word that's translated later as the same word is Gentile. So when you see this talk about nations and the powers and principalities that are over the nations, oh my goodness, you're talking about a worldview that is different than anything you and I would know.
Right.
They're familiar with, unless you are, again, Michael Heiser or something like that, and that Deuteronomy 32 mindset, which I think is fascinating. He can say it and articulate it much more clearly than I can. But if we just look at what he's saying, and what, not Michael Heiser, what the author of Ephesians saying, Paul, I believe. Some people would disagree and say it's just traditionally. I think it really was Paul, though. But we see that this really is a battle about something more than this world. I think the church does a disservice when we don't talk about these other powers, principalities, that the evil that exists in this world. And we sort of couch in these terms. We don't like to say Satan, and we don't like to say the adversary. We don't like to, and I get we don't want to proclaim him, we want to proclaim Jesus, absolutely. But what we see is that we have, in all of our intelligence and all our wisdom of man, and we have just taken out all this stuff, and we just sort of pass on to this other stuff, the armor, and we forget what we're fighting against. We're not fighting. It doesn't matter what armor we put on if we forget who we're fighting against. There's power, there's a real spiritual battle going on. We see this most clearly, I think, on Easter. And Good Friday, especially when Good Friday, Passion Sunday, some traditions like ours, we see that we think it's just we focus so much on this horribleness of what happened on Calvary, the horrible pain he endured. We forget that the spiritual pain was just as great, and that was part of the battle that Christ won over sin, yes, over flesh, yes, but also over these powers, principalities. That Christ is the victor, and how dare we not talk about that? I think if Satan could only be at one place at one time, he'd be in the pulpit denying his very existence. So I think for us to understand this fully and what it means today, we have to know what it means in the first century. And that means the powers, principalities, the people that try to take away the glory of God, that try to steal that from him, and that end up being worshipped on their own, about these fallen demonic forces, if you would.
Okay, cool. Thank you.